Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to the Scream Scene. I'm your host, Jody Dean, filmmaker, YouTuber, haunted house attraction owner. What I like to do, man, is I like to interview people that are in the vein of horror, the vein of filmmaking, actors. If you're tied to this field that we obviously love so much, and you're going to see in the background of this gentleman's uh, camera here in a second. I got a producer. I think I've went down the line of everybody that's had anything to do with the Terrifier franchise now, but we got one of the last producers to interview here. David told me about you the other day. I went down the rabbit hole and I'm like, how have I not interviewed Steven yet?
Mm.
So Steven Barton is here with us, ladies and gentlemen. How are you?
Hey, man, how are you?
Doing pretty good. I tell me a little bit, man. How did you get to where you are doing what you're doing?
First, the Earth cooled, and then the dinosaurs came. Yeah, man, I've been at this for a minute, a 30-year long minute. Actually, in this week will mark 31 years. I've been doing this in one respect or another. I started doing fanzines before the internet was a thing, to reach people locally in my area, and that went pretty well. And then I fucking got this thing called a web TV. It was like a set top box that gave you access to the internet, which was really in its infancy back then. And I learned how to start coding from doing things like working on old fucking websites like GeoCities and shit like that.
Mm,
And I always wanted to yeah, I always considered myself very lucky being that I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, because I had access to things like Chiller Theater and the Fangoria Weekend of Horrors. And it always like bugged me out that like what would I do if I was in middle America, you know? Like that didn't have like access to these cool conventions and shit like that, and especially the poor cats in the Bible Belt who love horror movies that are just they're damn Satanists now, I guess. But I always wanted to be able to make a place where horror fans could go and gather and be free of judgment and share opinions. And one day, my girl at the time, who knew that I was approximately 5 years old mentally, she would do things like go on eBay and look for cool shit to buy me. A practice I'm trying to instill in my now wife that she just hasn't bit yet, but I'm working on it. And you know, she found this roaring Jurassic Park cage, which is more or less just a cardboard box that you press this button and it goes roar and fucking I'd press that button all day and she knows that, right? So she bought it for me, and the guy who was selling it ended up living like 2 blocks away, so there was no reason for that dude to like ship it to me. So he called me one morning, introduced himself. He's like, hi, I have the thing you bought off of eBay, blah blah blah. And so I went outside to meet him, and it ended up through just pure happenstance that it was then Fangoria editor Tony Timpone.
wow.
And
What a jump right into the horror
very
deep end.
and we being that we were neighbors that lived literally 2 blocks away from each other, we got to talking a lot, and we would end up riding the train into work together. And one day he asked me, we have fangoria.com, do you want to come on and be our website moderator? And I'm like, well, shit, yeah, I do. I mean, throughout that time he learned that I knew my shit, you know
Right.
and he felt comfortable asking me to do that. So of course I said yes, and of course it was a job I was not paid for, which was
Hmm.
probably a very recurring theme in my life, you know. But fuck it, man, I had a chance to say I was working for Fangoria, so of course I jumped at it. I mean, who wouldn't?
Right.
And that led to me working for another company who I don't like saying their name because they appear like Candyman and I fucking hate them. And
But did they pay you?
no, of course not.
Fuckers.
So it's a real long story, dude. Dread Central ended up being the news area of that particular website.
Mm-hmm.
And when they fired me for basically just being myself and not, I don't play nice with people who want me to do things that I don't believe in. And once it became clear to me that the emperor had no pants, it just, I was like, all right, I'm out. So they fired me. And then I just said, fuck it, I'm out. And then like this magical thing happened. Like everyone who I had brought to that website to work with me, I never said anyone was working for me. People work with me. I don't do
Mm-hmm.
it. I'm the boss fucking nonsense. So everyone that I had brought to work on Dread Central with me, they all quit as soon as I was fired. And at that point, we said, well, what do we do? So we decided on July 6th to launch dreadcentral.com as an independent entity. And what was really cool about that, the thing I'm most proud of with Dread Central is, for me, my vision for that site when creating it was I always wanted to have the indie filmmaker have as much voice as the studio filmmaker. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And the playing field wasn't really level at that time, because all these other websites that were doing kind of what we were doing, they were paying a lot more attention to the studio filmmakers than they were the indies. And I'm like, fuck, dude, that's a mistake. And it certainly was. And
Right.
once Dread Central started hitting its stride, they all kind of turned around and started looking things a different way. And it was really cool to see. And it was a bitch, man. I never thought that Dread Central would actually become a full-time thing. I mean, it was a hobby of mine, right?
I remember those early days, man, and I gotta applaud you. It's always been one of those ones that I care the most of what is going to be said.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate that. And because it was no bullshit, we never had a parent company. Dread
Mm-hmm.
Central, for 18 years that I was under it, for 17 years that I was under it, was independently owned. I owned it with my partner, and our other partner. It was three of us. And we didn't really start making money for 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
So for like the first 8 years of me doing it, it was very funny. Like people always thought because we were talking about movies and shit and we were doing set visits that we had this glamorous fucking lifestyle. And it couldn't have been further from the truth. I was working at GameStop, slinging
Wow.
in video games, man. So my typical day is I would wake up at 4 a.m. I would update the site for the East Coast. And then I would go to work at 9 a.m. and I would come back like 3 o'clock, then update the site again with everything that I missed. And then I would take a break to eat dinner and then keep updating the site because California didn't adhere to East Coast time zone shit. So there was always stuff happening at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And we always had to have new content and new features. And I was the only one, other than my partner who was doing all the back end stuff, that knew how to put up stories for people.
Wow.
Oh, I had a staff of like 20 people and I was the only one putting shit up. So again, once I ate dinner, I would just go right immediately back to work and I'd work until 12, 1 o'clock sometimes, sleep for 3 hours and get up and do it all over again. And I did that for about 8 years, and
Wow.
it was a
Then it was going like this, but in the 8-year mark, did something just like, oh wow, boys, we're monetized, we're at a new level in the game. We're
I,
now where the horror people are they're coming.
I think what the turning point was is we proved that we had the staying power,
Mm,
and when it came to getting talent to work with me on Dread Central, I didn't give a fuck if someone knew how to write. I could fix their articles. I
yeah.
cared that they had a voice and they had a unique opinion and they were interesting. So for me, it was you had to have content that was compelling, that people would read and go, yeah, that cat's on to something, or blah, blah, blah. And that was the coolest shit. And I think once we proved that we had that kind of staying power, because 8 years is a very long time for any .com to last.
Right.
And we proved that we weren't going anywhere, and we started thriving, and we exploded for probably about the next 8 years, So it was like 8 years of poverty, then 8 years of I got to quit GameStop and live good for a little while, at least modestly good. It wasn't like I was fucking rolling in dough or anything like that, because whatever money we made during those first 8 years, it would be money that we would pay the writers for working on the site. So we didn't really take money, we just did what we had to do, and we supplemented our income with other jobs like fucking retail and whatever the fuck we had to do to survive. And so yeah, there was a good portion of my life, man, where I was working for free like ever. And things happened and it fucking hit. And the way websites would make money was like, let's say if you're Warner Brothers and you have The Conjuring, right?
Right.
And you're looking to target that audience that would be interested in that movie, you'd see through analytics what the most trafficked sites are. So if they were to pick us, for instance, and then run an ad campaign on our site, it would be like, fuck, sometimes 20, 30 bucks, 20, 30,000 for
Right.
a campaign. And that was fucking awesome. And it worked well. And if the movie performed, of course, they would go back and they would hit up that website for the next ad buy and the next ad buy. So that's how we were making money. But as it happens to do, technology changes, everything changes minute by minute, second by second. So once social media started becoming a bigger thing, it kind of killed the websites in a lot of ways, because now instead of the studios buying ads with us, they were taking that money and putting it toward Instagram pages and putting it toward Twitter pages. And they had to pay people to create them and run them and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden we weren't getting anything. So we would go from like, in like the span of like 2 months, I think, or 3 months, we went from making, maybe $20,000, $30,000 a month to 5,000.
Wow.
And it was that steep and that quick of a drop off. And once that, it was fucking crazy too, because it was like the studios are like, hey, can you do a story about our Instagram page? I'm like, oh yeah, the thing that's putting us all out of business, sure, why not, right?
Yeah.
And it was scary, man. So at Dread Central, we had a choice. It was either close up shop, and go home, which I was more than happy to do, or find a parent company that would support us and help us over this hump. And Epic Pictures Group came along, and their vision was they wanted to use the established name of Dread Central to become a brand for their DVDs and Blu-rays, their horror entertainment. They wanted an actual bankable level, a bankable name, I should say. And we were that, so we decided to go with them. And they're still cooking, man. But it became apparent to me after about a year or so that the dude who was really spearheading this endeavor, who I did not get along with at all, he kind of wanted like a yes man. And I'm a lot of things, but I'm not a yes man. So I'm go fuck yourself. You're a dick man. And I did tell him that, as a matter of fact. And it was a really weird situation, man, because what they did was this one dude, he decided to drive a wedge between me and my longtime partner by saying things like, Steve's not a team player. He doesn't want to listen. He don't want to do. I've been doing this shit 18 years at this point. You know what I mean? I know what the fuck I'm doing.
Right.
And they basically benched me, for lack of a better term. Like I wasn't allowed to write anymore. They tried to move me over to sales, and that didn't work, dude, because I'm not a salesman,
Yeah.
That's a tool I don't have in my toolbox. That's a very specific skill set. And the guy was like gaslighting me. He was like, "Oh, no one cares what you say anymore. You're irrelevant, blah, blah, blah." And when you got somebody telling you that you suck literally all day long, you start believing you suck.
Mm.
And that's basically what happened. But one of the things they gave me as an option to do other than write, which was what I was good at, they said, okay, well, it's come time to spin Dread Central off into a video label. And I was like, all right, cool. So they gave me like fucking 200 movies to watch, and every fucking one of them sucked, you know?
Ooh.
And I was like, fuck, dude, if I'm going to put out a movie under a label I created,
Mm-hmm.
it has to be good. I'm not going to put my name and my credibility and my motherfucking tenure in the industry on the line for something I don't believe in.
Yeah.
And I picked one out of the 200 that they had sent me, and it was the Kane Hodder documentary, To Hell and Back, which is fucking awesome. And during that whole fucking mess, Damien Leone, he saw a quote of mine. I think it was a copy of 31, Rob Zombie's 31.
I
And
just watched that 2 nights ago. Again for the millionth time.
so he basically emailed me out of nowhere, and he's like, "Hey, Steve, I have this thing, having a real hard time with it. No one wants to take it. Nobody believes in it, And at this time, it was a time when Stephen King's It was huge at the theater, so the world already had their evil clown,
Right.
So as a result of that, because everyone is so fucking short-sighted, they were looking at this little movie, which was aggressively violent, as nothing that would ever in a million years do anything. And I told him, sure, man, I'll give you a quote if I like it, and we'll see where it goes. So I watched the movie, and I'm like, holy shit, that was fucking good.
Right.
And so I called him back, and I'm like, what are you doing with this? He goes, we're about 1 second away from self-distributing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, don't do this. I want this. This is the movie I want to kick off the Dread Central label. Let me talk to the powers that be. So he said, okay. And then I had gone back to Epic, and I made my case. And at that point, the foreign rights weren't available. So it was hard to convince them because they wanted all the rights. But I just fucking wouldn't let it go. I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is it. So they bought the movie on the strength of me not shutting up about it, telling them that this was the next thing. And they acquired it. They made all of our lives a fucking living hell. This one person in particular was like, this is the worst acquisition we ever made. Nobody's going to like this. There's already a killer clown. This movie needs to be edited. We need to change the title. It's not going to be visible on Redbox because it starts with a T. Maybe we should call it #Terrifier to take advantage of the site. And I'm like, holy fucking shit. Then they wanted to edit it. And if you edit a frame of Terrifier, it's no longer Terrifier. It's one of a million movies. So
Right.
These are the things I was telling them. And they were like, no, this is the worst thing we've ever done. We wasted money because of you. And I'm like, listen, and nobody could ever deny this because I did it in front of everyone. I said to them, if this movie doesn't hit like I think it's going to hit, I will leave. I will quit. You could have my half of the company. And I fucking laid it out there. It was 18 years of my career. I was that confident.
Wow.
And I think at that point, that guy figured that it was the easiest way to get me out of the company so he could assume full control over everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was literally the only line of pushback he was getting. My then partner, who I no longer speak to, he was all in, And when all this was going on, I was like, fuck, dude, I feel like you don't even have my back anymore. And he's like, well, Steve, I have the company's back. And I'm like, that's all I need to know,
Mm-hmm.
And so they dumped it. They gave it the smallest release possible to kind of ensure that very limited people get a chance to see it in a theater.
Wow.
And but the one thing they did do that was fucking perfect was they gave it some killer artwork that I think Damien provided, and they put it on Netflix. And
Mhm.
so that artwork, which is so fucking striking.
Very captivating, man. To this day, I think that's probably like one of the most captivating artworks. I know exactly what you're talking about because in the early days when you seen it, it sold it immediately. You had to click on it to see what it was about. You didn't really know at first. When we first seen it, we were like another killer clown movie, but it was enough to get you to click on it, and then you seen, wow, this ain't just another killer clown movie.
And that's exactly what happened. So all of a sudden, people started discovering it, you know? And then I'll never forget, I was at a show in Texas where I had my epiphany that I didn't suck, that they sucked. That's a whole other story. I was at this show, and I think it was Texas Frightmare, and I seen people walking around with Terrifier stuff. And I'm like, wow, the fuck did they get that? I don't even have that, right? And so I called Damien. I'm like, dude, do we have merch? And he just started laughing. He goes, of course we don't have merch. And then I'm like, well, I think we got something here then. And then before you knew it, there were murals popping up all over the fucking world. Berlin,
Tattoos.
New York. I mean, it was you could not escape Art the Clown. And I made my point, and I went back to them, and it turned out Terrifier was not only their best seller on the Dread Central label, but their best seller overall.
Wow.
Then I told them to go fuck themselves, and I said, fuck out the door, because if my career was going to end at that point, there was no better way I could think of to go out. You know, that was my mic drop. I proved that I knew what the fuck I was talking about.
And that was it. That was the official departure right there. No more ties. Like, are you still in communication, or is it like, hey, I'm doing my thing now? Peace.
I have zero to do with Dread Central since I walked away.
Wow.
What they're doing, I don't go there. I get my news from Bloody Disgusting like everyone else, you know, and I'm proud of what I did there. I'm proud of my Dread Central that I got tattooed on my arm. You know, that was my Dread Central. That was the vision. What they're doing now, I don't know. I mean, it's up to the fans. If the fans think they're kicking ass without me, God bless. They did the right thing. We both did the right thing by moving along with each other, you know. But that was that, man. So that brought me to here. But the one of many things that was wonderful about Dread Central is I got to work with and befriend like all of my fucking idols, you know. So Sid Haig and George Romero, who were my two favorite people in the world, they were my mentors. You know, they were my friends. I mean, I was how fucking lucky am I? Right?
You're very lucky. I'm sitting here thinking, man, how cool would that be? Yeah. R.I.P. saying that.
We got along famously for many, many years. George put me in his last movie as the featured zombie that does the main kill of the movie. That was my life coming full circle, man. And it was awesome. And Sid, we were just fucking, it was like the time we all spent on the road with each other was like carnival in a lot of ways. We were like weirdo road family that no matter where we went, mayhem followed us. And it's all in the book I got coming out in December, Comedy of Tragedies. And all those stories, all of these stories are in there actually, but in a lot greater detail. And yeah, man. And so I thought I was done, you know. I really did. And what sucked was like being Uncle Creepy. As I didn't know that name when I picked it 30 years ago would follow me my whole life, because it was just an homage to an old comic book. It was like Creepy Magazine. Uncle Creepy was their crypt keeper. So hindsight, I probably would have been a bit more selective of the name that would follow me the rest of my life. But
Oh, I love that name, dude. When I seen that, I was like, wait, I know who this guy is, but like what I think is a lot of people don't realize, or let's say this, my personal opinion, um, and maybe you maybe you don't care. But I feel, personal opinion, you don't get as much credit as you should get as a producer, as a person that's had a major part of all these things that have come together, because it's very hard. When I heard your name, I was like, oh, wait. I was like, dude, isn't that guy from Dread Central? And then you go down the rabbit hole a little bit and you see you've had your foot now in the door on the producing end. And it seems like that's really what is that it? Is that like in-game shit now?
I think so. I mean, the first thing I produced was Never Sleep Again, the Elm Street Legacy, which has gone on to be called the best horror documentary that's ever been made. And
Very, very well done.
that's very fucking incredible to even say that. That was the first thing I produced. Then I started working on other things, and I was on the True Hollywood Story, and fucking, it's like my career has, in a way, both snowballed and stagnated all at the same time, and that's fine, dude. Because I'm signing at conventions now,
Right.
and which is the most humbling thing in the world, because I never thought anybody would give a shit about anything that I did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just incredible now. And the one of the main things I learned from both George and Sid was how to treat people, how to expect to be treated. And just like they did, I will stay till the last person who wants to see me sees me. I will treat them like the most important person in the room, because to me they are. Because without the fans, I don't have an existence. I don't exist without the fan base. And as soon as I'm done the professional things, I immediately go hang out with the people who came to see me. And the
Awesome.
reason I do that is because I don't have fans, man. I won't wrap my head around that. I never will. To me, what I have is peers. And
Mm-hmm.
these are the motherfuckers I want to hang out with, because this is who I am. So that's where I'm most comfortable, is just hanging out, chilling with the fans, man. I think that's the coolest thing. And that's where I'll always be. I don't give a fuck if I win an Oscar. I'll be the first one to jump off the stage and go to fucking Arby's with somebody. I don't give a shit. This stuff don't mean anything to me. The only thing that means something to me is the genre and what to do to put it in a good place and to keep it going. And that's what I've done my whole career.
The energy, the love, man, the love for the horror community. There's nothing like it. And you can tell that your heart's in it, man. And I think a lot of people that are in the horror community, they have that special kind of energy, man. But there's certain ones that just really stick out that are, thank God, like keeping it alive, keeping it thriving. I was just interviewing a guy before you, and he was saying that he feels like the horror the horror genre is like too oversaturated. And I'm like, dude, you couldn't make a person more happier than this guy right here. Flood it out, keep it flooding. The movies that people say are the shitty indie horror films, they're my favorite films, dude, because you get to see people be creative with nothing. And let's be honest, everybody wants to be a filmmaker. We all don't have those connections, man. It's
You know what, man? At one point, Halloween was a shitty indie film. Evil Dead was a shitty indie film.
That's crazy too, because you watch it now and it's like, wow, they did some shit that's like, how, bro?
All of these movies, which is why it was so important to me that the indie filmmaker had as much of a voice as the studio filmmaker. All of these movies, even Romero's movies, were a shitty little indie film that they didn't expect to do anything. And he changed the fucking game with his shitty little indie movie.
Bro, facts. The way that he shot, Diary of the Dead to date, man, just that opening is just like so powerful. I can just watch that one part over and over, and it's like, how could you not give him more props for this than what he got? I mean, I know
George
he's up
has
there, but
George has this thing. His movies catch up with what's going on in the world. It usually takes about 10 to 20 years for people to realize what George was doing and saying. Like when Day of the Dead came out, everyone fucking hated it. But now
yeah,
it's classic, you know? It's
yeah,
you gotta wait. I don't hit Carpenter's very much the same way, man. You gotta these it's like to get into the heads of the average fan, because the average fan is very young, and then we grow up and we still love this shit, but we see it through different eyes. So I think watching these movies through adult eyes, you start really appreciating it, and then you're like, wow, this was fucking good, I was wrong, this is awesome. And then
yeah.
you start spreading that word, and then all of a sudden it becomes a classic. But there's also a pitfall that fucking some filmmakers, especially young filmmakers, fall into. And this is what I told Damien. I'm like, dude, you can't ever call Art the Clown a fucking icon. You can't say that any, even, and not even Damien, anybody, you can't say I have the next horror icon. You can't say I have the next big thing, the next midnight movie, the next classic. It's
Mhm.
not up to you to do that. It's up to the fans to embrace that and make it happen. They're the ones that could say that, you know?
Right.
No one else can. They're the ones that are going to make the movie successful or see it fucking fall apart. The only thing a filmmaker could do is not worry about trying to hit those fucking marks and check those boxes. You got to just make the best movie that you can. And if you can, you deliver something that's good, it'll find its audience. And then that is the audience that will be able to say unequivocally that Art the Clown or whomever is the next horror icon. It's the
Mhm.
fans that have that power, not the filmmakers.
Put it out there, let it live, let it breathe, and let it do its thing organically. Yeah, we all set ourselves up for failure, man. I've done it before. I've learned my lesson though, and I think that's the most powerful shit, man. Is when we do make those mistakes and we come back. Because I see some people just making them over and over and over. It's been a 20-year span, but you got to be real with yourself. And I love that, like when you said earlier, you're not a yes man, dude. You're the best kind of people to have in your fucking corner. Like everybody tells you yes nowadays, bro. I love it when people hurt my feelings. I love it. I'll
But
try and keep them closer.
I have an email inbox filled with emails from people who wouldn't have peed on me if I was on fire 3 years ago. And I just take it and I keep it there because I want to remember who I don't want to work with. You know, these are the people that
Wow.
if I wanted to fucking make millions, and who fucking doesn't, I could just fucking start going, yeah, okay, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do that. Yes, I'm on this. Yes, I'm on that. Fuck that, man. I would rather, and it's stupid, and my family and my wife will probably kill me for it, but I think they understand it. But I would rather die a pauper with integrity that did what I wanted to do and stuff that I'm proud that I did than a rich douchebag with no fucking soul, you know?
Mhm.
So I'm happy working on $200,000 movies. I'll do it for the rest of my fucking life. I don't care. What I care about is just making sure the wheel keeps spinning, man. I don't live extravagantly. I've never had. I've
Right.
never had money to burn. I've worked and clawed and scratched. I sacrificed relationships for this genre. I've sacrificed my time, decades of my life, and I do so happily, and I'll do it again. You know, it's
Love
because
it.
this is what I love. This is who I am. This isn't an act. You know, you go to a horror convention, you see fucking your peers there, and they have their tattoos. They bled for this shit. They know what this shit's about. They have their fucking Romero things. They have their fucking pinhead, whatever. I don't see a hell of a lot of fucking Captain Kirk tattoos. Now I love
I say it all the time on this show. I said nobody's going and getting the rom-coms tattooed all over them.
it,
Like, come on.
it is what it is, man. You know, you
Yeah.
gotta this is it's It's an embodiment, man. And I think the reason why we resonate so much, people like us resonate with these genres so much, is because we've spent our entire lives hearing what a fucking freak show that we are. No, they're the freaks, man. We're just the cool motherfuckers that get it.
Yeah.
We don't judge people. We don't do bullshit to each other to get fucking ahead. And that's not to say that all horror fans are like that.
Right.
Like I said, I have a long list of people I will not work with and a new list of people I will never work with again, you know?
Um,
So it is what it is. You gotta, I only want to work with people that realize that it's not about them, it's about the genre. Once you start thinking that this shit is about you and you start letting your ego take over and you start making questionable decisions that are made on the basis for where you think it's going to get you or how much fucking spotlight you think this is going to give you, you're doing it for all of the wrong fucking reasons and you shouldn't be doing it, you know?
your
Remember,
art.
remember where you came from, remember what it took to get you there, and never say poor fucking me. Fuck
Mhm.
poor me. You keep moving, you keep going. And if you just keep, I'm living proof, dude. I'm a street kid with a GED education. Nobody taught me how to write. Nobody taught me how to code. I learned all this shit because I said, well, why can't I do this?
Mhm.
You know, I'm not a journalist. I'm not a writer. I'm none of those things. I'm just me. And what I love to do is what I put myself into. And how far I've gotten is a result of me just saying, fuck it, I'm just going to keep going. If you read my book, it's called A Comedy of Tragedies because that's what my life has been, you know? But there's never a moment in all that, in that entire book, where you'll ever hear me saying, poor me. It's never poor me. It's always what's next. Life is going to fucking slap you around, man. That's living. And instead of just saying to yourself, "Oh fuck, why, what?" Fuck that, dude. When shit is bad, right? When things are good and you're happy, it's easy. You're laughing, you're smiling. You don't got a care in the world. But that's not living. That's
Right.
enjoying yourself, but it's not living. Okay, it's when you've been fucking smacked down for the umpteenth time and you're flat on your ass and you're in a fucking hole and you're like, how do I get myself out of this one? It's the choices you make then that are going to dictate who you become and how you shape your character. That's exciting. That's chaos, but you got to learn to embrace it because you have a choice at that matter. You could either let it dictate who you are, or you could use it to dictate who you become. And that's what it's about.
I love it, man. Dude. Yeah, you got a powerful voice, brother, and I can tell that it comes from experience and years of doing it, the trial and errors. I everything I've learned, man, it's been through trial and error, and I'm same as you, man. I didn't even get the GED. I was got kicked out of the class a few days before I was supposed to get it. But there's nothing that I wanted to do that I haven't done, and everything I did, I just did it, learned it out of love, passion, and made a lot of mistakes and learned from them and got better and better. And
It's only a mistake if you don't learn from it. If
right,
you
yeah,
fuck up, it's an experience.
true.
You don't learn from it, it's a mistake.
That is so powerful, man. And I pray to God that people implement that. You know, it's one thing like everybody says, "Oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." Implement this shit. It is so great, man. See every struggle is a blessing, man. Build that armor for the shit that's to come. And I can see it, dude. And now I like you even more, man. Like it's crazy. Sometimes I do these interviews, I never know what to expect, and then somebody will just hit me with something powerful that makes my heart do the same thing that horror films do. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it's just like that's what I love about horror, man. Um, I see that you're a collector of movies and DVDs behind you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something that Uncle Creepy is um what's the most important thing to you that you collect, or what's something that I don't know resonates with you the most? Is it horror action figures? Is it the movies? Is there something we don't see?
It's something you don't see. What I collect is memories
Mm,
because all this shit, as cool as it is, gone in a second. It's the interactions you have, whether it be with somebody who's your idol or somebody who's your friend or somebody who's in your family. It's those memories that you make that are the most important things to hold on to because that's the only thing you have that nobody could take away from.
yeah.
It's yours. Nobody could take that shit away from you. Anything could be replaced, but your relationships and your memories and what you've been through, that's who you are. That makes you irreplaceable. So it's always every time I do a convention, I meet a fan, whatever, man. I love that. I remember every fucking one of those interactions because they're genuinely important to me. Who would have thought if I would have told fucking 13-year-old psychopath me that one day I would be in the position to sign something for somebody and they'd be happy to see me do it, I would have told you you're out of your fucking mind. That's never going to happen. So that's what I'm grateful for. If I had to pick something I'm physically attached to that I love more than anything, I love I love getting things that are kind of one of a kind. Like I just got a piece of the Amityville Horror House, you know. For my birthday last week, my wife got me a signed Mike Tyson glove. It's like these things that I get that mean the world to me. But someone could give me a fucking car, or someone could give me a pebble that they scrawled my initials on, and each one will be of the exact same worth to me. You know,
Right. Yeah, there's a depth to you, man. I love it, dude. And I'm hoping I can have you back on the channel
whenever
again in the future. I feel like this is you're going to be a reoccurring guest if you'll have it.
they show up like herpes, man. I'm like a switching case of them. I pop up out of nowhere every
Uh,
now and then.
oh man.
A salve or some shit or
Well, I know you got a movie to go see. Let me ask you just a quick question. Do you see yourself writing, doing some directing, or are you staying in the producer chair or background?
it's funny. I got a little bit of time.
I feel like you got a story in you to write, man. Like being such a horror
I I
lover.
I currently have a project that I wrote with a good friend that's sitting with one of the major studios right now. I have another project that was very personal to me that I wrote to be a little indie film or even a play. Uh, like I said, I finished my fucking book, which was insanity. So I'm going in a lot of directions, man. I taught myself how to write screenplays. I'm working on a TV show with one of the bigger horror talents right now. So there's a lot of stuff happening with me, and it's a lot of good stuff, and it's a lot of stuff that I'm grateful for that I can't wait till I could fucking talk about. But that's the thing in this industry. It's like
Hurry up and wait.
hurry up and wait, man. And the good shit that you really want to scream from the rooftops, if you make a mistake by screaming too early, you put the whole thing in jeopardy.
Yeah.
It's like those people that'll say, like those people. Here's something for an indie filmmaker. You can't go up to like an actor, say Danielle Harris, at a convention and say, "Hey, would you look at a script for me?" And they could be being nice and say, "Oh, sure, send it to this, that one." And then the very next day, the same person will go online. So and so is attached to my movie. Because what happens when that happens is so and so's manager reads that, and then so and so asks for a lot of money. You know what I mean? Because now you've already put it out there, so you can't. I've seen so many people fuck up like that. You gotta, as much as it drives you crazy, you gotta sit on it, and you just gotta wait. There's a lot of stories, current stories that are in my book that I just want out there so I could finally fucking talk about them, you know?
Hmm.
And it's like I know I just have to wait until fucking December 9th when it comes out, and I just got to play it cool, you know? But there's a lot of good things coming, and there's a lot more to come after that because I don't sit on my laurels. I could have said, okay, well, I created one of the number one horror websites in the world. I produced the biggest horror documentary in the world. I was a zombie for George Romero. I started the Hatchet Army. I could go on and on and on and on, but it's cool that all that stuff happened and I'm grateful for those opportunities, but I'm always looking for the next thing, you know, because why not? Whether or
Yeah.
not I'll ever direct, I don't know. I didn't know I'd be able to write a paragraph, you know, and I wrote a book.
Wow.
So I guess it's where my headspace is at and where my heart leads me. And thankfully I have a good woman behind me who actually encourages me to keep going and keep pressing. You know, when I was writing the thing that's sitting with the studio now, some other tumultuous shit had gone on. And what she did was she went and she had a poster designed with the title of this project I was working on. And she came home and she just hung it up to be right in front of me where I work. She's like,
Damn.
what you need to be kept to concentrating on. And I'm looking at it right now because this is where I work from. You know, this is my office, right? So it's right in front of me all the time. And I look at it and it helps keep me focused. And now that I have somebody behind me that doesn't, the last, shouldn't even talk about it, but one of the things that happened, I was with the same person for 21 years and they were wonderful, you know, but they also were asking a very valid question. You know, they were asking, well, if none of this works out, what's your plan B? There is no plan B. There
Hmm.
never is a plan B. If you're doing this and you have a plan B, you probably shouldn't be doing this. You know, it's what it is. Either you're gonna make it work by doing whatever you possibly can, or you're not. But you can't be putting pieces on another game board when you don't have all your pieces on the one that's sitting right in front of you. So you gotta just keep pushing. And because I had no plan B, and because I had no way of offering her security, which was not a terrible thing. I'm very selfish, I guess, you know. It I just We started arguing and it didn't work because I don't have a plan B. It's this for me or it's nothing. So now I have someone that is thinking a different way, who doesn't make me feel bad about what I'm doing or what we have to deal with in order to get where we want to get, you know? So it's a wonderful thing. And as long as I have her and good friends who I trust and the respect of the fans, that's all I need. I may not be monetarily rich, but I'm the most wealthy motherfucker when it comes to the heart. And that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, and that's all. That is all that matters, man. That is powerful stuff to hear, man. And it's crazy because I think a lot of people, and this goes back to what I was saying about, sometimes people not getting, again, not that you're looking for it, but not getting um the props, the flowers, uh I feel like they deserve, or maybe the fans, or whatever, right? It's People don't realize when they see your name attached to something, all this struggle that you've went through, the inner demons, the outer demons, the world, they just see that name attached to something and they say, "Oh, well, he did that." And it's like, man, to get to that point, it sounds like you've walked through some fucking fire, bro.
I,
And it has shaped you to be the man that, bro, like I'm eager to see what's to come. the book, the other things, because it's endless possibilities when you got a good team behind you. But that's the hardest thing to get, because again, it's so hard to find people to be real with you, and you've ended up in that circle because you fucking fought for it, right? If you would have threw in the towel at any moment, it's like one wrong move and you wouldn't be sitting where you are.
Yep. Or one right move and you still get fucked, but that's okay too. You know,
Yeah.
there are certain things that have happened recently that I know um, I did everything right and I still got kind of screwed, you know, and that's okay too, because when I was doing it, I left my mark, an indelible fucking mark, you
Mhm.
know? And I could say that about quite a few things. And I'm very privileged to be able to say that. I left my mark on Dread Central. You know,
Yeah.
I left my mark on internet journalism. I'm not a fucking journalist. I left my mark on fucking documentary filmmaking. I'm not a documentary filmmaker, you know? Make no mistake, and this is no hyperbole. If it wasn't, it's probably the first time I'm going to say it. If it wasn't for me and every fucking thing I did, this is the first time I'm going to own this. If it wasn't for every fucking little thing that I did, nobody would have heard of Terrifier. Everything that happened, a lot of it has to do with what I brought to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It sounded like you put in a hell of a fight for it to even.
On the line to get
Yeah.
that out there, you know?
Wow.
And it is what it is. And I'm happy that so many people adore it. And I love that. And that to me is such a high compliment, you know, that I was able to have a huge hand in creating and bringing the not creating, but bringing the world what they call the next horror icon, you know?
Yeah.
Humbling, man. That's fucking humbling. And I know it's hard to say that without sounding like a douchebag that's full of themselves, but it in that particular case, it's fucking true, you know?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You take that one piece away, this whole thing might not be where it is right now. I mean,
You can
that's
make
crazy.
you can make the best movie in the world, but if nobody knows about it, it doesn't matter,
Dude,
you know?
that is the worst for a filmmaker, and I've seen it all the time, and I feel very blessed. I was kicking myself in the ass whenever I had released my first movie. I wasn't kicking myself. Let me rephrase that, because I sound like a douchebag. When I dropped my first feature film last year, that I wrote, directed, filmed. I did every job, because literally I've never been in a position where I can find those people that are on the same wavelength, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm not waiting for them to come. I'm just gonna do it. And I sold right to date. I've sold right at 8,000 copies. And I remember at one point, I said, "Shit, man, it tanked." And then I interviewed this guy, and he was telling me how he spent $1 million on a film, and he said they didn't sell 8,000 copies. And I was just thinking, man, I'm sitting here, don't realize how blessed I am. I spent 10 grand making the movie.
Yeah.
It's like, like that was like,
First of all,
we
congrats.
think we have to shoot too fucking high sometimes, and we really don't. Just the fact that 8,000 people seen it, I should be, and I am, but it had to kick in, because I thought, like, it felt like that was like it sounded like a loss. Didn't feel like a loss. It sounded like shit. Only 8,000 people are gonna see this, and it's done. But that's incredible.
Dude, you know what? The best advice George ever gave me, it wasn't even advice, he made me promise him something. We were sitting down, we were drinking, as we did, because boy, did we.
Oh man, there, that's too cool.
And
Shit.
he said George was like an old hippie. And I hope when people read the book, they get a different, they get an insight to who he was really like the George I know, you know? And we were sitting there drinking, and he just fucking out of nowhere, he turns around, he slaps me on the leg, and he goes, "Steve, I want you to promise me something." And I went, "I can promise I'm going to refill your drink once it's empty." And we laughed, and because that's me, but you know. And he says, "Whatever you start, I don't give a fuck what it is. Whatever you start, finish it." Promise me you'll finish it. And I did. That's why Dread Central, when it came time for me to walk away, I finished it. I could not bring that site any further than I did. You know,
Mm-hmm.
working on another horror documentary. Maybe I'll do another one, but as far as I'm concerned, I finished that. The
Yeah.
bar for that is so fucking high that it's ridiculous. I mean, we did that documentary with the specific intent of there being no reason for anyone to ever watch another Nightmare on Elm Street documentary ever. You know?
I agree. And isn't that, or wasn't it, isn't it on, isn't that shit on Netflix?
I don't know where it is.
I could have swore I don't know, but
It's 4 fucking hours long. So,
it's insane.
you know, I think the Crystal Lake one, which I didn't do, is on Netflix. I don't really know. I don't really, dude. I was sitting at a fucking the last show I was at, and I'm sitting with my wife. We're at my table, and somebody walks by with a poster that they're ready for me to sign. I'm like, oh yeah, I was in that. I don't even remember half the shit that I did.
Whoa.
I
But-
really don't, dude. I that's the God's on, and I'm not saying it to be facetious or sound like an. It's just I've done so many fucking things that sometimes I literally have to be reminded that I did something. You know, because I don't. What I just said with Terrifier is so out of character for me because I don't take credit for anything. I never do. I give credit to everyone else, and that's just who I am. But I do something, it's done, and I move on to the next thing, you know? I don't really dwell on it. I don't want it to be my 5 minutes of fame. I just want it to be another fucking block in my Jenga tower, you know? And I'm building it, man.
Well, as far as is starting something and finishing it, I, I'm hoping that you're not gonna finish being done with movies in the future. I can't see that because your love for horror is just everlasting, right? There's no cap on that.
I don't think I'll ever be finished with the horror genre. But I
Yeah.
tell you, if and when there comes a day where it's time for me to bow out, because, you know, I'm 52, man. I only got like what, another maybe 20 good years in me, and the young lions, they're going to come up, and that's what they got to do. So when it's time for me to bow out, when I have nothing left to give and it's just time for me to sit back and enjoy it, I'm looking forward to that day. You know,
Yeah.
my goal in life, I shit you not, is to be bored, but my brain just keeps firing in all these different.
Bro, the gift and the curse, man. Same here. I cannot. As soon as I finish something, dude, I'm hungry to start the next thing. I can't let the grass grow.
If you rest on your laurels, you just miss opportunities, man. You just can't. I'm always looking and thinking about what would be cool to do, what would be fun, you know?
Mhm.
And that's why I started working on screenplays, because now I'm finding joy. I really had a great time writing the last 2 that I did, you know? And so I think I'm gonna hang out in that pocket for a little while, see what happens. And then who knows where it goes from there. But once it comes time for me to bow out and be out, I'm gonna be like fucking Johnny Carson. You're never hearing from my ass again. I'm just gonna go chill somewhere and enjoy and reap the fucking fruits and chill, man. And you know, when it comes time for me to fucking croak and fucking take the dirt nap or fucking get set on fire and be put in a can, I just want to fucking, I want people to enjoy it and laugh at what a complete fucking lunatic I was my whole life. Like, don't ever cry for me, man. I wouldn't cry for me. The only time I cry about the shit that's happening or happened to my life is because I'm laughing so hard at the fucking absurdity of it all, you know? Because it is absurd. I don't think when I wrote that fucking book, man, I was doing the psychological thing, right? I was like, all right, I'm going to write this shit. I'm going to get it all out of my system and I'm going to burn the motherfucker, right? And
What?
they say when you have these demons, you write them and you print them out and you burn them and then they're gone. That's
Yeah.
I don't think they'll ever be gone. And I wrote it. I wrote half of it over 2 years, and then as it so happens, that's happened so many times, a hand grenade was thrown on my life, and I ended up moving from California to the East Coast again. Now I live in Haddonfield because, of course, I do, which is bizarre. And I was sitting here at my computer as I usually am, and my wife Danielle walks over, and she's like, "Can I read what you wrote?" And I looked at her like she was fucking crazy. I'm like, "Wow, you know everything about me." She goes, "I'm just curious." So I sent her the fucking what I had of it. It was a Word doc at the time. And she went away and came back a few hours later. And she's like, "You can't burn this. You have to finish this." And I'm like, "Well, why?" Because I was going to finish it eventually, but I swear to God, I was going to burn it. And he says, "No, there are things in here that are so relatable to people that this could actually help somebody. You don't understand what you've written here and what you put out there." And so I said, "Okay, well, she's pretty smart. Maybe I should just finish it." So I spent another 2 years, and it's right up until fucking it ends last March, you know? March,
Wow.
last point that I wrote something for it. So I've only been finished writing it for a couple of months. And I sent it, I was going to self publish it, And then I found Encyclopocalypse publications from my good friend Josh Milliken, who took over, who was one of the people that took over Dread Central when I left, one of the few that actually revered what I did and tried to keep that kind of, I guess, vision going. He is a writer. He's a good writer, and he introduced me to the people at Encyclopocalypse. And I sent them the book, and they wanted it right away because I wrote it, which is hugely fucking huge compliment. Thank you. You want it because I wrote it. I sat there and I said to myself, "Oh, I think you better read it first, because I don't think it's what you think it's going to be." I mean, yes, there are stories about the industry that are fucking legendarily funny and sad and inspiring and crushing, but I don't think anybody's ready for how personal it is,
Mm-hmm.
And before I got them to read it, I mean, they just wanted it. So I'm like, "No, read it first and then tell me if you want it." And then they read it and they're like, "We have to have this. This is like nothing we've ever put out."
Wow.
Like, okay. And then my good friend Mark Redfield, who's an actor, he was last in Netflix's House of Usher. Mark has like a voice I just want to roll back and forth in. Like, I want a whole house made of Mark's voice, you know? And I sent him it. I'm like, "Dude, you do audiobooks. Can you take a look at this for me?" Because he was like, "Well, don't you want to read it?" I'm like, "Motherfucker, I wrote it. I lived it. I ain't reading it too, And the main reason why I don't want to read it is because in order to really give justice to some of those moments that are in it, I had to go back and really put myself in places I don't ever want to be again and open doors that I really don't want to have opened again. And so I can't physically read it. If I ever do a book tour, I'm just going to tell people stories that aren't in the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like a fraction of what really happened. It's like, this was like the Cliff's Notes of my life. And Mark read it and he came back and he's like, "Steve, I can't narrate this. I have to perform it." I'm like,
Damn.
"You have to perform it." He goes, "It's all written from the first person. So like the whole book reads like you're sitting at a table with me and I just laid out everything. Just like I'm talking to you now, that's the whole book.
Wow.
And he's like, "I need to perform this. Can I perform it?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." Now I'm curious. I'm like, "Was that shit good? I don't know." So we'll see what happens, man. But
Yeah,
he's doing the audiobook. The book comes out on December 9th if you order it through the website encyclopocalypse.com. You get it 3 weeks early. You get it signed because I specifically said I want to sign it for everyone that orders it.
that's awesome.
They're going to send me something called a book plate to do. And I'm like, well, what the fuck is a book plate? I don't know what this shit is.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Apparently it's a sticker that I could sign for them.
Got you.
That's what I want to do that. At first, it was limited to 100, but I'm like, I want to do everyone that fucking pre-ordered it.
That's fire. I do that. I do that too with my DVDs, man. That's killer, bro. Wouldn't have been some shit if the last line of that book you would have been just at funds, man. Just said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I was gonna burn this, but."
Well, I said that I'm very
Did you
much
say that?
I'm very much upfront about that.
Holy shit.
Dude, the fourth paragraph starts with the sentence, I don't even know what the fuck I'm writing this for.
Dude, I love that though, man, because that's one of the sense where it clicks in right there. Like, okay, this person's gonna say some shit, and I need that.
It's brought Adrienne Barbeau to tears. Kyra Sean from Night of the Living Dead said I'm the only person that could make her fucking laugh hysterically after making her sob. Because everything I find humor in everything, man. And if I'm the deepest story, I'm gonna reflect on the funnier side of it if I can, because I don't want to lay heavy shit on people, man. I want them to have a good time with this. So it's basically a good time. There's some fucking heavy shit in it, but stick with it. It's a good time.
Tropicana twister of emotions, man. You can pull them all over the place, and that's what honestly, that's what a really good film does. I mean, in my opinion, like I want to bring you up, I want to bring you down, and I want you to feel everything. And that's one thing I love doing with the films personally is I call it tempo. I come from music, but I love that tempo, man, where people think, okay, I can breathe for a second, nothing else is going to happen. No, it keeps happening. I love doing that. And I think with like what you just described, that's kind of how I feel like that would make me feel when I'm reading this.
Yeah, it's a ride. If you do read it, I'm very interested in what you or anyone has to say about it.
Well, I'll tell you, honestly, I've never, and I'm not ashamed of this, man. I've never read an entire book in my life. I can read very well. I can write outstandingly. My screenplay is like, I 277 pages. You tell me you need a script in 2 months, bam, it's done. But when it comes to reading, I've never been patient, but it takes the content. Like the content has got to get me. And that sounds like something I would absolutely enjoy reading. And I'm not just saying that either. I mean that.
You're doing, you'll likely get a lot out of it because it is that.
Well, just talking to you, I have. I mean, I want to say that, like you said something a little bit ago, that definitely hit me hard and resonated. And that hasn't really happened in an interview, man. So thank you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, truly.
I got to take my ass to the theater to go see Maxine.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you, Uncle Creepy, for being on here. Guys, smash that thumbs up, comment below, share this on social media. Love you so much. Post every week here. Make sure you check this guy out, follow everything he's doing, get his book, see his movies, and all the good stuff that is to come. I'm Jody Dean, but until next time, sweet nightmares.